And welcome back to Social Confoes. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, good night, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining again to Social Confoes. I'm your host, Jean-Luc, together with Diego Amarali. And today we have an interesting, very, very interesting guest. We're going to dive in a little bit deeper into decentralized finance. But about that, Diego, how has your week been so far?
The week has been pretty good. Only today I got some bad news. So if my energy seems a bit low throughout the call, I'll try to keep it up. But we'll talk about this a bit later after the show. But definitely, let's get into decentralized finance. So yeah, we kind of after the social media conference, we kind of continued the episodes afterwards in the trend of blockchain. We had, blockchain on social media on blockchain during the conference, art, and then we talked about the metaverse, Facebook's rebranding, and it kind of naturally led to us talking about crypto more and more. And fortunately for us, we have our own kind of DeFi wizard here locally. I like to call him our DeFi wizard. He'll probably deny that, but he uses a wizard emoji and profile pic everywhere. So that's why I'm calling the DeFi wizard. And what is DeFi? Shanduk already said it, decentralized finance. It's kind of a new frontier in finance and technology. So I don't quite understand everything about it yet, but I think Mitchell can, enlighten us a bit more about certain concepts, about certain aspects. What's it about? What are opportunities? What are things to look out for scams? Because a lot of people, misstep in these kind of new technologies as well. So, and I also know Mitchell from back in the day. He participated in a few hackathons, the Daily Zero hackathons. And he was one of the only or one of the very few people who could program on the blockchain, etc. So he has quite an interesting background that we'll find out more about him personally. So without further ado, Mitchell Pawirodinomo, quite a long name, we'll call you just the DeFi wizard for now. Mitchell, welcome to Social Convos.
Hey, thanks, guys. Hey, Diego, Sean-Luc. Thanks for the flattering words. Yeah, DeFi wizard, huh?
Hey, it's the first thing that popped into mind when I saw your wizard profile picture and kind of waving that Ethereum with his wand. So,
So we do have to
exactly.
ask, like, Mitchell, for like people that are less familiar with blockchain and cryptocurrency, what is decentralized finance? Because it's a beautiful word, it's beautifully shortened into DeFi, but what is it exactly?
So, um, first, you need to understand what is centralized finance. So, if we take, for example, when you deposit money to the bank is the centralized entity. So, you deposit and you gain interest, right? Or yield. And where does the yield come from? It comes from the borrowers. And what DeFi, yeah, in the aspect of DeFi, there is no centralized entity. There's just code. So everything works automatically, autonomously. So nobody has control over what you can and cannot do. Everything. So the yield. How can I explain it in simple terms? Yeah. Help me out.
Take your time,
yeah,
take your
yeah.
time. Maybe we have to break it down into pieces. So the first thing that you started with is that the yield, or as we know it as interest, it doesn't come from a centralized entity. So basically,
Exactly.
it's a supply and demand. But then the biggest question becomes like, how does it remain stable? Like, does that come through smart contracts? And if so, what are those? And if not, where does the stability, the guaranteed stability comes from? Or do you have to understand that if you dive into decentralized finance, that it will fluctuate a lot?
Yes, of course, it will fluctuate because, as you said, it's a supply and demand. If there's a huge demand on, let's say, US dollars, then the interest rate goes up. Um, so there's the borrowers and there's the lenders. The borrowers pay the lenders um, interest. So that's where the yield comes from. If it's stable, it's not really stable. Sometimes it's 2%, sometimes it's 10%. It's supply and demand. Yeah.
And those percentages you're talking about, it's more in the DeFi space because, as you said, if you compare it to centralized finance, the lenders usually are the banks, right? And then the borrowers are the people like us, companies, etc. And they kind of have a kind of a fixed interest rate that you have to pay back. But if you look at it in the DeFi space, decentralized, there is no like bank, so to speak. So it's basically people lending money to each other or networks lending money to each other and
Exactly.
kind of paying each other in a more, I guess, P2P way.
Yeah.
Um, but before we dive into more technicalities, why do you think there's, especially in 2020, there's been more interest and there's been the rise of DeFi technology in the general, like more people, more spaces have been looking into the options of DeFi. Why do you think that is? Why did you personally dive into DeFi coming from, your programming background and blockchain, etc.?
Yeah. So first of all, one, there's freedom. So you're 100% in control of your money, where your money goes, and how it's on the blockchain. It's 100% transparent. So you can follow your money along, where it's going, how it's generating yield. But at the bank, you don't know who the bank lends your money to and where the yield is coming from. So for me, the transparency is really important, and the freedom. And because I'm a bit technical, innovation is a part of my drive, and it's something new, something really interesting. So yeah, that's why I entered the space.
So I do have to ask a little bit of a follow-up question on that because there's a lot. Like there are so many options. So maybe you can give us a little bit of a thought process, like how. And again, we're gonna tell to our viewers and listeners like this is not a financial advice, but like when you dive into different decentralized finance project, what do you usually look in when you look at the white paper or look at the background of this decentralized or DeFi project. What do you look at when you look into these in these projects?
Yeah. So first of all, I check if the smart contract, so the code of the project is audited. So audit in party comes to check the code on how secure and how valid the code is. So if there's an audit or multiple audits on the project, then the risk is it's lowering.
You cut out there for a second. So who audits this? Like the code? Is it like other programmers, other um,
There are there are specific organizations that are auditing, such as CertIC. CertIC audits a lot of these DeFi protocols or companies, and they're very uh, are very good in what they do. So they have a document that they expose, or yeah,
yeah,
and
that they use as a base to check everything? But is it just one company that audits most of these things, or do they go through multiple? Like if we're talking about decentralized, it's kind of centralized again. If you have one auditor checking it, so it kind of
yeah,
defeats the purpose.
there are a lot of auditors. There are a couple of people, or yeah, single groups, um, or there are companies. But these the audits are very expensive. So not a lot of these newly protocols, because they don't, they don't start with a huge fund, or a huge sum of money to pay the auditors. So when a new protocol pops up, you won't see the audit directly. It's mostly on the roadmap. So when I look at the white paper, when I read the white paper, I check how simple is it to understand, because the white paper goes very deep in technicality and mathematics, because it's complex. So to me, I must understand it, such as borrowing and lending is a very simple concept, but when it comes to how they keep the borrowing, how they keep the market stable, the interest rate stable, that's something, yeah, very complex.
And okay, but I do want to jump a little bit deeper in the sense of getting a feel of like what decentralized finance platforms look like or companies look like. So when you look back and you look at how it evolved, like what was the biggest what for you had the biggest impact? Was it Bitcoin, who was kind of the originator, not really decentralized finance, but the originator of blockchain technology, kind of like the pioneer? Or do you say like there has been in the past year, 2 years, there has been another project what most of these projects actually see as the pioneer or the godfather of the decentralized finance space?
So of course, I started out with buying Bitcoin back in 2019. um, I heard of Bitcoin in, I think, 2016 or something, but yeah, I didn't think much of it. But when I participated in the fintech, the blockchain, the hackathon, um, then we as a team coded our own blockchain just to understand the concept of how the blockchain works, and how is it, how secure is it, and how it secures the data, how it encrypts the data. So at that point, I got interested in Ethereum. So and it, in within Ethereum, you can see as a application platform, or yeah, a launch pad, yeah, something like that, where people build applications on top of Ethereum. So that's when it all started. So first of all, it was the first, let's say, the first project that started all of this was the dexes, so the decentralized exchanges. That's where it all started. Like Uniswap is one of them, one of the big ones, and that's where it all started. Then lending and borrowing came, protocols such as Compound, Aave, and then MakerDAO came. MakerDAO was the first where you can deposit your Ethereum and borrow against it for uh, X amount of time.
Basically, like how do the banks call it? Uh,
On the fund.
I forgot the word. Chanduk, help me out here.
Oh, okay, okay. So you basically give a amount of Ethereum to the DAO, and that
Yeah,
allows you to lend X amount more from there as well.
yeah, kind of
Exactly.
like
Wow, okay, that's interesting. Yeah, that is interesting. It's kind of a down payment of some
yeah,
sort.
like
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
when
Okay,
you go
so
buy a house. Oh my God, I forgot the word. What the hell is the word?
yeah, a mortgage, mortgage.
Mortgage.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're getting a lot of shout outs in the comments, Mitchell. People who are really interested in what's going on. And there's a question by Rushil who says, I'm interested in the DeFi space. I want to get started with programming smart contracts. What platform or blockchain would you recommend and why? So for somebody who's just starting out, you have a tech background, but for somebody who's just starting out, where would you send them to?
There are a lot of free courses on YouTube. I know Free Code Camp is one of them who does a lot of webinars, live streams about coding in on Ethereum. So you can start out there because Ethereum is a big community, and there are a lot of groups and people who are willing to help you out. So there's
So,
that.
out of curiosity, is like Ethereum the main platform you focus on, or like Ethereum derivatives or Ethereum layer two? Have you checked in other chains such as Binance, Solana, or how do they compare to the Ethereum ecosystem in your opinion?
Um, Yeah, I played around a bit in on the Binance Smart Chain, a little bit, a lot on Polygon, a little bit on XDAI. So these are Ethereum compatible blockchains, and a lot of protocols are now going multi-chain. That means the same platform, but it runs on multiple layers, such as Binance, Polygon, Ethereum mainnet, and but I focus mainly on Ethereum because that's where it all started, and yeah, the community there is a lot bigger than the rest.
Um, so this brings then another question. I want to go into you mentioned Aave and
Compound,
compound,
yeah,
yeah, a while back. I want to go into that a bit, but before we go into that, if you look at how you said Uniswap was big in 2020. I remember it was like mid 2020. There was a
yeah,
huge airdrop. People went crazy. Like uh, they got a couple of thousands.
People went crazy for missing out on it.
Yeah, and then you had copies like Sushi Swap, and then
yeah,
Binance came with
exactly,
Pancake Swap, and everyone else banking on getting this airdrop for their tokens. And another topic that kind of spins out of this is then the tokens are used as governance tokens. And governance tokens are basically the right to vote on protocols by the community to, say what can pass through and in a decentralized way. And these kind of airdrops went crazy. So what do you think of the concept that these platforms, exchanges, whatever you call them, do with airdrops? Because there was another big airdrop, I think, yesterday with Paraswap, for example. How
Paraswap,
do you
yeah,
see airdrops? Like, are they useful, or are they just hype? Are they just to FOMO people in?
yeah. Of course, airdrop or yeah, a lot of so the protocols are basically rewarding people or giving people uh, the right to vote by airdropping them the governance token. It's I find the governance token a very interesting concept because it gives us the users right to vote for specific or adding a new token on the protocol, for example, and this decentralizes the protocol even more because a lot of people have saying rights on uh,
So it's a good thing, I guess. In that sense, it's
it's a
good.
good thing, yeah.
You airdrop to a lot of people, and then the people who are in it for the money, they sell off. But like all the people that are in it for the governance and transparency, they stay on and they vote. I think it's a great
Exactly.
way to kind of get ownership from that perspective. I fully agree. I'm not sure if Diego was also trying to find a different angle on it as well, but I do understand it from a governance perspective.
No, from a governance perspective, definitely. It's still very early, and we kind of talked about this. I think touched on it slightly last week on who in the end who decides. Do you need a 90% consensus, 70% consensus, etc. And if you have like thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people governing, and in the Hive protocol, for example, you can delegate your kind of voting power to someone else that you trust. So I assume it's kind of the same way uh, with the ENS airdrop last week was kind of the same thing. When I had to claim the tokens, you could then delegate your power to like people who submitted, I guess, like their resume, so to call
Yeah.
it, on the network and what they're working on. So you could delegate your power to them. So when new protocols come, that they can vote for you. So it's kind of like running a community in the sense of how a government would run a country, but with more.
No, way too decentralized to compare it to a country. Way too. So there are people in
But
the
you get my point.
comments. Yeah, I get your point. People in the comments are saying like they don't see enough Mitchell, so you should spend more time with your actual in real life IRL friends. There
Yeah,
are
I
two
know.
more questions that jumped in. Let's start with the one from Shanil, which is a little bit related to what we asked earlier on. So, when looking into a new project, what are the specific things you look at in order to decide whether to invest or not? You basically already said that it's very important that the projects have been audited. But like you said, early on projects, they don't have the money or the capital yet to get audited. So, how do you usually find these projects early on?
Twitter. That's the only
Yeah,
Twitter,
yes.
the Discord community, and yeah, that's the
So,
only
how
way.
many? I want to ask you both before we go to the next question. How many Discord groups are you guys in?
Give me 5 seconds. Let me count.
The reason I'm
Yeah,
asking this
like
is like
20.
20.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
it's
still reasonable.
manageable.
It's manageable.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's manageable. But
I'm more
yeah,
close to 30, 35.
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So if you're interested in this space, I saw someone had a question about interested in this space, especially, the crypto space, NFT space, DeFi space. I think the best place to find the communities of people actually working hands on these types of things are Twitter, as Mitchell said, and
yeah.
Discord. And once you have like two or three people or just a few accounts and communities you're in or follow, the content kind of aggregates through the
It
algorithm, and
snowballs. It
yeah, and
really
it snowballs.
snowballs. I
Yeah.
think I think
So
Twitter is really the best space, and you don't have to worry about anything on Twitter when it comes to social media because locally on Twitter nobody really cares about you. So I mean, you can post whatever you want on
Yeah.
Twitter. You can make it a full. I mean, I know people that have giveaway accounts. Basically, they only use the account for Twitter giveaways, which
like
puts me in an
you're,
awkward position
you're talking about
because
yourself, right?
no, it puts me in an awkward position because I have over 4,000 followers on Twitter, which is not a lot, but it kind of already gets to a point that some people don't respond to my tweets anymore because it's so kind of crypto based at the moment. That yeah, I mean,
And speaking of being overwhelmed with all this information and new developments, Gregory then also says, how do you filter out the needle in the haystack, the good from the bad? Even though it's kind of everything is curated on there, there's still a lot of bad in there.
Yeah, there are a lot of moon boys, as we call them.
What's a moon boy?
A
Moon
moon
Boy.
boy is a slang used in crypto Twitter. It's basically someone who hypes up a token or a protocol just to get the maximum gains, uh, so to say. Um, and how do I filter out? I follow a lot of founders or writers or in the space, and not just some people who's shouting out 100x on some coin or something.
Are there any that come to mind, like the three or four in the Ethereum space, for example, that you say, okay, if this guy talks about it and three more people that you trust talk about it, it's worth looking at? Any specific accounts that come to mind
Yeah,
immediately?
Vitalik Buterin, of course, the founder of Ethereum. There's Anthony Sassano, who does daily recaps or Twitter recaps, and at 11 p.m. local time. So I have a notification on, and then I listen to his
Nice.
podcast. Yeah, if you follow those two, and you check who they follow, and you have a, a, a pretty good filter.
Shout out to Vitalik for not only mentioning Hive multiple times, but actually also following Hive as well. So I'm a big fan of Vitalik as well. But
Is that so? Quickly, because you had High Fest last week. Tell us short about what happened during High Fest and how Vitalik played a role in that. And
okay,
Mitch,
okay.
then Mitch can go into his experience with Hive.
Okay, so basically, Hive Fest was last Friday and Saturday. It's the yearly festival from Hive. And Vitalik plays a role in the sense that every time when we mention the power of, like somebody talks about him with the power of decentralization, basically Vitalik jumps back to the story of Steam and Hive and how basically Hive broke free as a community from Steam and decided the community themselves decided to create their own blockchain, kind of similar code, but then really iterated on it and really made it better. And Vitalik often mentions, at least twice in the past half year, he has mentioned Hive as a great test case where somebody tried to centralize a blockchain and the community says, nope, not going to happen. And the best part about HiveFest was that it was in VR. It was kind of this metaverse experience. I got to speak right after the opening, so that was pretty cool. And it was difficult for me. I'm gonna tell you. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not techie. I'm not back into gaming, so the VR space for me it was new. I had to Outspace didn't work properly on my Mac, so I had to get in onto an old Windows interface. I had to use a Microsoft email address, which I only have one
What?
of. I used my 1998, listen carefully, my 1998 email address. I used an email address that was 23 years old to get into VR, into Outspace. I mean, that was pretty dope. And then, unfortunately, my experience, which was great, got cut off by the local power company who cut out electricity for a while. And after it was cut off, I couldn't get back into Outspace. So, yes, I'm a bit of a boomer, Gregory. Garrett says Windows for the win. And some shout outs from Miguel as
Hey,
well.
the girl.
And I do have
Uh,
to ask also a shout out from the US. That's pretty cool. Thanks,
nice.
thanks, Jade, Jade. So I do have to ask before you jump into the hive: is Elon a moon boy or not?
I don't take his tweets very seriously. I think he's just trolling around and playing around in the community just to test. I think he's testing us on how emotional we are in when he tweets about Doge. It shoot ups when he tweets negatively. It dumps. So I think he's just testing how um, how sensitive the community is.
Is it a problem that Shiba surpassed the market cap of Doge? Is that a problem in the space? Or you're like, nah, it doesn't really matter.
Uh, yeah, I don't like or hate Doge or Shiba. I think this is an example on how far meme coins can go, and Shiba is really an example of that. On it pushes the boundary, as in you don't have to be uh yeah very smart to launch a token, and it goes on the top 100.
It basically shows how do you call this? As you said, it's a meme coin. They got nothing to lose. They created a protocol. The founder of Doge said it in an interview a few years ago as well. Like they literally created the Doge as a knockoff meme from
Yeah, exactly.
Bitcoin to experiment with. And I think these two are very important examples because it just shows how if there is are people willing to accept and how I'd say fragile or how easy it is to take something as a unit of exchange. or a store of value, for example. If everyone is like, we're going to use shells for the rest of our lives and everyone accepts it, kind of like we're going to use a Doge meme as an
Yeah.
token of exchange, everyone accepts it, no problem there, because it's kind of like an agreed upon unit that people can trade or do stuff with.
Yeah,
And that goes
exactly.
back
And
to how fiat is.
yeah,
Like,
I,
I,
I'm not sure I'm willing to compare it to fiat, but it's interesting. What I think is interesting about this situation is where in traditional culture, well, I'm talking about 20 years ago, you would have things like Birkenstock and Converse shoes being like a cult status, and people were willing to spend a lot of money on it. And the biggest difference there is you would consume it and you would have lost the money and it would be over. Like there was no kind of buyback, or when you're like, yeah, I don't want this brand anymore, you just give it back and you get something in return. Whereas with these cryptocurrencies, it's basically you can jump into it, feel like ride the wave, and at a certain point you can be like, yeah, I'm not into this hype anymore. I'm just gonna sell it off. And I think that's a major change compared to I'm comparing it more to collectibles
yeah,
than
this
comparing
is
it
where
to
liquidity, I think, comes in. And I think we can go into that in a second when we go into liquidity and staking. But before we go to that, yeah, Mitch, you said you had a Hive account back when it was Steemit. So did you explore Hive further or not? What was your
no,
experience with Hive?
no. I explored Steam back in the days. I think I attended the the seminar of Sean Luke about Steam, and it's a very interesting concept because it's focused on the community. It's really focused on the community and building together. And I miss the high fest, man. There were a couple of things that were happening in my life, and yeah, I missed it completely.
so. But the positive thing is you have a Steam in your wallet, so with a hard fork, you got some high from it as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
that's
It's
that's that's good. I mean,
I need to recover my wallet though. I hope I,
Hey,
I hope I can recover.
it's free money. We've been talking about airdrops as free money for a while
and
now.
you should check if you don't also have, because there was another sidechain,
Yeah.
Blurt. In case you don't know Blurt.world, there was also a fork there, so you might also have some Blurt on
Hmm.
your account. And so
I'll,
there
I'll check
are
it out. I'll
multiple
check it out.
wallets that you have to recover now.
I'll check it
Uh,
out.
all right. So kind of laser focus on the Ethereum space. But I think that's good because it's important to be aware of the different chains, but having a focus and mastering one, it's important too because even Ethereum is very broad and with layer two solutions and Ethereum 2.0. God knows when that's going to launch. Uh, but the layer two solutions, etc., like Polygon, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and that's where liquidity plays a role with borrow and lending. So, how do these, I guess, DeFi platforms, you mentioned a few, make sure that there's enough liquidity that people can borrow and lend and trade and not become in a situation like Shanluk said, he bought a shoe and then no one else is buy it because it's an illiquid object.
Yeah. So there's an incentive on depositing liquidity. On Aave, for example, you get Matic tokens on the Polygon chain. On Compound, you get the Com token when you deposit. So there's an incentive to become a liquidity provider. That's how they attract a lot of liquidity because people want to farm these tokens, maybe for governance or maybe just you know free
Free airdrops.
free tokens. Yeah, exactly.
But does this not cause a problem as in if every if they're kind of creating these incentives, these rewards, kind of like printing money, like the the money printer go brr and they're printing these tokens. Um, so does this kind of don't doesn't make it the platform or the exchange, whatever you call it, kind of inflationary now, and that people are gonna keep borrowing and lending. You have this incentive. There's kind of more supply, even though it's a
Yeah,
different token. So
yeah.
doesn't this become inflationary, and then you get the same problem again that over time
Ah,
they'll lose value?
yeah, not really, because the incentive doesn't last forever. They have, let's say, a promo of 6 months where you get Matic tokens or Comp tokens, and then you get nothing. Um, the protocol allocates a percentage of their treasury to pay out the incentive. It's not that they're minting new tokens and creating more supply. They're just allocating from the treasury and giving it to the community.
You look confused, Jean-Luc.
Yeah, so I want to know now who governs the treasury.
The treasury is governed by a team.
Okay, but how is that team elected, or is that centralized?
It's yeah, it's centralized in some way. Yeah.
Yeah, so I
No
think
where you're going.
that's see the problem. See, I have like small detailed problems. Like I just mentioned to you guys that I had to use a 23-year-old email address to get into Outspace. And the reason I'm mentioning is that Outspace, to get in, you need either a VR set, or if you want to do it on Windows, you have to do it through Microsoft. Now,
Mm,
if you're going to be like, I want to have a decentralized world where the major players are not pushing all the buttons, and you have a fest, a digital or a virtual reality fest, where you either have to own Mark Zuckerberg's Oculus, which is now changed from name, which you
yeah.
use a headset, which is kind of an investment by one of the bigger centralized players, and you have to log in with Microsoft, another one of the bigger players. Like there's still a lot of, I mean, we're really getting innovative and changing the landscape, but some parts are just kind of stuck. And one of the reasons I like kind of the way um, Hive works is because you have the opportunity by the community to kind of vote for who they want as witnesses. And that's also where the major breakup with Steam came, because Justin Sun was just putting sock puppets as witnesses and was giving them all this voting power just to overtake the top 20 witnesses. So I think from a worrisome perspective, I mean, you have to have a team that sets it up. Like not every space is gonna be like Bitcoin, where there's just a person that nobody knows who that person is, who kind of sends everything out. With Sushi Swap, that became a very big issue because it felt like the owner was like dumping his it looked like a dump just to get rich quick scheme. So these kind of things happen, and it makes like I saw the comment here. Those just a middle finger to everybody who got a master in finance, because I think the most beautiful thing about Doge is like the founder saying like, you guys know this is a meme, right? I'm not no longer involved in the project, and the founder just leaving the project, and after the founder leaves, the project takes off even further. So these are really cool examples, but on the other side, I'm still kind of worried about like intent matters, and like how can you measure the intent of the creator. So I think that's something that for me is still a little worrisome.
Yeah, decentralization is hard because we're literally building from the ground up. We're creating these technologies, these protocols from scratch, and we're in a speculative space. We're experimenting with money or with creating value from nothing. So we have a long way to go to tackle these kinds of problems in the centralized world, because to explain decentralization to somebody who's never heard of it, it's like entering a whole different world, a whole different dimension, and you're there are people who are who get airdrops of $10,000s, and yeah, to explain such a concept to someone totally new in crypto, or yeah, it's
What's the most bizarre explanation you've heard, and what's the most bizarre reaction you got from someone who you try to explain it to?
I got told crypto is a scam, crypto is a Ponzi game, and yeah, for me it's just like, no man, come on.
Were those people that invested in OneCoin?
Potentially, I don't know. Potentially, I think they got burned out because of these a lot of Ponzi's who are there are a couple of Ponzi's locally. Um, I think there are still one coin cars running, driving around with a one coin sticker. So these things don't die out, and it's it's yeah, it's toxic to the people who are really building the foundation.
Diego, we have two more questions. Which one should we go for first?
Um, yeah, you pick. I got a more technical question about Aave, but you can do these two first, and then I'll ask mine,
Okay,
and we can wind down.
let's move on from easy to hard. Shaniel is talking about NFTs. Yes, Shaniel, there's a connection to DeFi and NFTs, but let's talk a little bit about NFTs first. They've been a hype, not even for a couple of weeks, but almost a full
Uh,
year now. Besides art and collectibles, do you think NFTs can have other use cases like real estate, etc.? And how would that even work?
Did you even explore the NFT space also?
Me, yeah, a little bit, but yeah, I don't really, yeah, I don't understand the full concept of where NFTs are going. For now, it's just art and collectibles, but there were white papers talking about um, digital digi- di-
Uh,
digitalizing
digitalizing, yeah.
yeah, documents on chain. But yeah,
Okay.
how would that even work? Yeah, I don't know,
I
man.
mean, I'm gonna go real meta in sense that this is a really new line of thinking. I mean, Nigel, who's in the comments, has experience with blockchain and real estate with Realt. I think Realt is it that you can actually, instead of buying a house, you can buy a portion of a house
Oh yeah,
with 10,000 different people, and when that
yeah,
house gets rented out or gets sold, then you actually earn profit from it. So that's one way to go about it. But if you want to talk actual NFTs, I think we haven't even scratched the surface of what NFTs can do.
mm,
I'm going to give you an example. Let's say one of the bigger hotels in Suriname decides they want to do their 50 years or 70 years anniversary, and they decide they're going to mint 700 NFTs of their hotel room. And everybody that has that NFT of that hotel room, that NFT gives access to staying in the hotel for 3 nights during the next year, and 3 nights during the year after that, and 3 nights during the year after that. So if you buy one of these NFTs, you don't only get a digital collectible, but you actually get 3 nights stay, 3 different years in that hotel. So that's just a concept that's already out there, not with the hotel space, but it's something that could definitely be. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a hotel already doing that. So these are kind of ways that you can go. And with real estate, it might be a little bit more difficult. But you can even say, like, if 10,000 people own this NFT, one of those 10,000 people is actually getting a house. I mean, you can go to that extent. So,
Jean-Luc, sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. We actually got someone in the comment who knows all about NFTs, so
yeah.
we're
I see
trying
him
to get
too,
Yes,
on.
man. You
yes.
could get him in
So,
on the
Rajiv, this is an open invite, and for Timothy as well, this is an open invite to get you on this space to talk a little bit about more about your experience. because I feel there is so much more that we can learn from the NFT space. But to answer Shanil's question, yes, definitely real estate. Real estate, there will be NFT solutions popping up for real estate in the next coming years. And both Diego and I are following a lot of entrepreneurs who are right or kind of big, who are already profiting from this NFT space. And then a little bit more of a technical question from Gregory. What is the fair value or the intrinsic value of Bitcoin? Is it a function of the mining difficulty or something like the price of electricity?
Hmm. Then I can,
Diego, if you can
yeah,
dissect this question a little bit.
Can you still hear us, Mitch? You good?
yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. So basically, Greg,
It's a hard question.
yeah. If you want to take a shot at it, but I'll give my quick take. I guess the fair value is what people decide. It is, in my opinion, um, because what is the intrinsic value of gold? We can go at this discussion all day. Basically, is it a fun? And with in Bitcoin's case, in Bitcoin's case, it's kind of derived from mining as well, because gold is mined. There's kind of a fixed supply on Earth, unless you have a meteorite crash or something to add more supply. But there's a fixed supply on Earth, and gold itself is kind of inflationary as well, if you look at it from a mining perspective, work perspective. So if you apply that same thought to Bitcoin, that mining work kind of relates to energy consumption or energy creation, and you could extrapolate kind of value from that in a sense. So uh, do what that which you will. I'll leave it open to you, but Mitch, you got anything to add to that?
No, that's exactly what I would say. So the people decide at the end of the day.
Right. Um, and
Okay,
one
let's
last
go
one.
on to an easier question. Okay, wait, before we go to the last one, Mitchell, let's quickly go to the easier question. Are you wearing a Barbarian tee?
Yeah, I got this shirt on Meta Factory. Is where the crypto artists come together and create stuff and sell them online.
Hey, that's another way. That's not even decentralized, but people make money from art.
Yeah, exactly.
So coming back to my question on Aave, we talked about, lending, borrowing, a bit about the liquidity and how that's arranged. And you mentioned going through the white papers. There's a lot of mathematics that go in it, protocols to keep the platform kind of liquid. And then you see some pairs have like high yields, like 80%, maybe even 1,000%. And what can you tell us about how these yields work, and what is a realistic range if you look at it from a value perspective? And also, are they kind of denominated in dollars if you look at these yields, or are they denominated in the base currency? If you want me to break it down, just let me know.
Yeah. So I've never experienced 1,000% yield on stable coins. It's mostly on speculative new coins that are popping up on the protocol, and maybe there's low liquidity but a high demand on the borrowing side. So there's not enough suppliers, but there's a lot of borrowers. That's why the yield is so high, and it's basically a way to attract liquidity of the token. That's how the protocol
But
calculates the yield.
that means that high number yield is then just as soon as they have enough liquidity, the high number yield goes
It
away,
it
right?
goes down. It goes down. Yeah.
But this yield is kind of denominated. Yield is APY is over a year. So basically, people have this kind of misperception on, oh, 1,000% yield, but it's not that
Yeah.
it's going to stay there for a year.
No. No.
So what would
Uh,
be a realistic
But
range for
wait,
you?
wait. I do have a question there. Like if Diego mentions, like you mentioned, it has 1,000% yield. but the 1,000% yield drops from 1,000 to 10%, for instance. For the time being that it was on a 1,000% yield, those days, do you actually do get the return from those days, or is it like where it ends up?
No, you get the 1,000% on those
On
days.
those
Yeah,
days that it was 1,000. Okay. I
exactly.
just
Yeah,
wanted to clarify because people will now be like, what if it
the
jumped to
1,000.
10% and I only get 10%? I do
Yeah,
want to have that cleared up.
yeah. I know. It gets the interest is paid out per block, so it's per I think 20 minutes or 10 minutes. I don't remember when the settlement is, but yeah,
So basically, if you're early adopter, you can actually profit from it and provide early
yeah,
liquidity to get this. And
yes.
this kind of ties back in the question on how do you identify like if it's good or bad.
Yeah, at these times, I stay at in the blue chip protocols, the ones that are uh, 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 the ones that are the most that have the most liquidity in the space. I know Aave Compound, those two are the blue chips, and I just yeah I stay away from the new forms, the new protocols that pop up. I might because there are a lot of clones of Compound, Aave. SushiSwap was a clone of Uniswap, but they had a twist on it. So that it was not really a clone. It was a clone in some sense, but you know, but there are a lot of one-to-one clones, and yeah, and these high APY pops up, the 1,000%, the 10,000%, but yeah, there's a risk because if you're not really technical and you can't read the smart contract that are deployed to create the protocol, there is a risk that they can rock pull you. Rock pull as in uh, basically they take your money and run away. And most of the time, the founders, the team is anonymous.
So would you say that's a red flag or not? The anonymity of the team.
There are pros and there are cons. The pro is it's not centralized because you don't know who the person is. As in that's why that's what I love about Bitcoin. There's not a single person who know. Maybe there is, but doesn't say who knows Satoshi. Nobody knows. But in Ethereum sense, what if something happens to Vitalik or the core team that develops Ethereum? It's a centralized point of failure, you can say. Um, but the con is you don't know who the person is, and it's very hard to yeah. Anonymity is just another concept of what you make of it. It's a personal preference, I think.
Yeah, and speaking of Vitalik, I remember I think 2018 there was this rumor going around on Twitter that he died or something because they hadn't heard from him for like several days or weeks, and so
Yeah.
this kind of I'm not sure what happened anymore, but it kind of did have an impact on Ethereum, but I'm not sure if that would have the same impact now. Because Ethereum grew by a lot in the past
Mm.
3-4 years, especially the developer space. And even though Vitalik is still a central figure, a prolific figure within the Ethereum community, and they take what he says and proposes seriously, there is a strong community with the foundation now that's kind of deploying the roadmap of Ethereum further. So I don't think if you've established that on the long run and you battle tested the network,
Hmm.
I think that even if a known figure like that would somehow be removed from the equation, it would still last, in my opinion. And then we have a quick question here, sticking to the yield farming part, from Ochi. Yield farming or staking, which one do you prefer?
Yeah, so those are two different concepts. Yield farming is when there's an incentive on earning a token, such as an example is you deposit stable coins on Aave to yield farm Matic tokens, or you go to Compound and you yield farm Compound tokens. Staking, on the other hand, is when you stake a token, you join consensus of the blockchain. I know EOS is yeah, there's staking and proof of work. Bitcoin is proof of work. Ethereum is still proof of work, but we're going to Ethereum 2.0 where it becomes proof of stake. And which one do you prefer? Yeah, it's a personal preference. Yeah, if you would like to stake your tokens, you go right ahead.
Got it. And yeah, kind
Diego,
of,
I
yeah.
think it's unless you have some more questions, but after that, I do feel we have to close up with a overrated, underrated.
We can wind down with that, yeah. So Mitch, we're gonna ask you some, give you a few topics, subjects, could be anything random. We'll think of them right now. Shanuk is cooking up. Let's see how much time we have. Shall we do two each?
We
Yeah.
can do two each or three each. I don't mind either one.
Okay, let's do three each. So we'll keep them short. So we'll give you a subject. You tell us if it's overrated or underrated. Overrated being, it's too hyped up, and underrated being, oh, people should definitely look into it more. And this is your opinion. There's no right or wrong.
Okay.
So Shanluk, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, let's kick off with something a little bit easy, something not directly decentralized finance related. Um, Hackathons, overrated or underrated?
Underrated. I think there needs to be a lot of more competitions because I drive with competition. I love competitions because it pushes us to the limits, to beyond what you can do, and in that pressure with the team, there's a lot you can learn from others and just the community. It's it's really underrated.
That's kind of how you got into the space, right? With through a hackathon.
Exactly, exactly.
All right, got it. So we didn't talk much about your background in education, etc. But I do want to know for locally, not in high school, overrated or underrated?
uh, I no,
You're not
because
there anymore, so
yeah, I know. But yeah, I always wanted to go to Natin because it's so focused um on preparing you to the work environment. Because other I see Chanel comment Natin is overrated. Yeah, could be. I don't know. It's up to you.
Maybe to fairness, because Diego stole my second overrated, underrated. But the reason this came up is because, like locally, even with we do a program with our Rotary Club, which is VOE, which is kind of the middle school, junior high kind of best students of middle school in Suriname. And when a lot of them who can even go to like premium high schools in the country because they're the best of their class, they still choose Natin because Natin, I think the brand power of Natin is just such that everybody wants to go to Natin. So that's one of the reasons why we just had to ask where that kind of comes from.
Yeah, exactly.
So the comments differ. Chanel says it's overrated. Jefferson Fatura says no, it's underrated. That's right. It's super overrated, and people are just having fun in the
Uh,
in the comments right now. So the next question I'm going to ask is mining, crypto mining. Is it underrated or overrated?
I, I don't really have an answer for that because both of them have pros and cons. And yeah, I think it's how you look at it is do you prefer mining or do you prefer what? Yeah, I don't know.
But
I'll
for the
steal that one.
mining, Okay, go ahead.
I'll steal that one from Mitchell. I do think for individuals, retailers like us, I think mining is overrated at this point. If it was 5, 6, 7 years ago, I would say yes.
Mm.
But at this point, with the ecosystem growing this big, it's kind of overrated, the returns you'll get and the volatility of the market. You have to invest quite a bit. But if you have a huge investment ready, do a project. Electricity is still relatively cheap here compared to the rest of the world. I'm not suggesting anything, but just giving some facts. So I do think it is a bit overrated.
Then the question maybe for Diego and Sean: are there still people mining in Suriname?
Probably. I think there
There,
are.
there could be. There
There
could be.
definitely
I,
are.
we
There's
might
some.
not know them personally,
Mm.
but there definitely will be
Yeah.
people that have the power to do so.
Yeah, but there's no mining farm like you know.
We
Um,
don't know. That's the thing. We don't know
yeah.
what we don't know.
Okay, okay.
Okay.
Could be
So
an underground bunker or something. Yeah.
next one for me. Technical analysis. Overrated or underrated?
It's overrated, I think, because yeah, I started out with technical analysis in my investing journey, and it became more and more overrated because there's such a hype about technical analysis, but at the end of the day, if you can read price action only, so the volume and the candles, then you're good. Or you just want to invest and yeah, you dollar cost average into the market and you're done. No technical analysis or
But
something
that is
like
a
that.
technical analysis that doesn't fall under technical analysis, or I
No,
just have to ask, as a noob that doesn't do any technical analysis, I just have to find out like from which point are we talking about technical analysis?
If you'd ask me, it's the point when you see people drawing a lot of lines on the charts, etc., and looking so many
yeah,
indicators.
a lot of lines, a lot of indicators, over complicating your setup. Yeah.
Suddenly, everything makes sense. Oh, look, the shape fits into that exact overlap of those lines.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with Mitch on this one. I do find it
Okay,
overrated as well.
okay. Let's go to the 2017-2018 premier altcoins. We're talking about Monero, Dash, Stellar, those kind of coins that really popped up the way that the swaps popped up in 2020, 2021. How do you feel about cryptos like Monero, Dash, Stellar, and the cryptos that really popped in the top 10 back in 2017-18?
Yeah. I wasn't really around when at the previous bull market, so I I'm not really uh, exposed
None of
to
them
those
is on your
altcoins.
radar in what way whatsoever.
Monero
Okay,
technically because it's a privacy focused chain, right?
yeah. Okay, interesting.
So privacy is still a bit underrated in the space, you'd say.
Privacy is underrated. Yeah,
Okay. All right. Then final one for me. Crypto gaming, and then specifically Gods Unchained.
underrated. I think that there's Gods on Chain specifically is tackling a huge AAA game such as Hearthstone, and there's a lot of there's there needs to be more awareness of these crypto games because I came across Gods Unchained from a very underrated channel, someone with I think 200 subscribers or something, and there weren't a lot of people around it, but it was a solid game, but the marketing was a bit lacking. That's why. But recently the volume picked up. They had an airdrop, so people joined and rushed to play the game. So yeah, there's that.
All
You
right.
know what I want to say, Diego?
Splinter Lads.
Nominated again this year as well for for their blockchain development. Splinterlands was also, they were talking after my talk at HighFest, and I'm a very big advocate for Splinterlands as the number one active blockchain in the world, blockchain game in the world. So if you haven't, if you recover your wallet, you'll be able to join into that as well.
Yeah, I will. I will.
Awesome. So I think we can leave it at that for today's episode. First of all, Mitch, thanks for joining us. And
Yeah, no
it's a
problem.
bit more of a technical episode than people are used to, but I think it is important to know about the space. And for us, for me at least, that there were some questions about the DeFi space that I wanted some more clarity on. And of course, we chat every now and then, but hearing it from you explaining it kind of gives me a better sense of how the space is interconnected. But with that being said, any final thoughts from you? What can people expect from you in the next short term, few months, and how can people connect with you? Or if you want to stay private, of course, you don't have to share your socials.
Yeah. Uh,
So go ahead.
so can I share a couple of resources that helps me along the way to
Oh
filter out some
yes, definitely,
content, and
definitely.
I I run a tiny blog to I write market recaps of what happened previous week, and then I look at the fundamentals of Bitcoin and Ethereum. Uh, it started out as a personal blog for me. I didn't publish it, but then I started to post
So
the
how can
articles.
people find this blog?
Oh wait. Can I post the link here? You go to abovenormal.co. Wait, I don't know if you can highlight this.
Sure, we'll highlight it in a second and also put it in the description later. But that's one, yeah, abovenormals.co, as Shanduk puts that up. And then what else do we got?
Mm, there are there are also a couple of YouTube channels that I follow on that give a good explanation on certain topics, such as how NFTs work, how DeFi works in simple terms with drawings, and I think those channels are really underrated. They have a couple of thousand subscribers, so they need the traction, guys.
Awesome for powering these good quality channels indeed. Just like Social Confoes, also a much underrated channel.
Very underrated.
Diego Amarali, very underrated YouTube channel. You should definitely check out Diego Amarali on YouTube as well.
Yeah.
Awesome. Then I'll ask you all the links again after the show. But if that's all of
All right.
it, then we can call it a wrap. Jean-Luc, if you got anything to
Yes.
add,
So
and
for the
then
final comment, Chanel just puts in, if you put 1,000 lines on the chart, there's bound to be some success. I
Yeah.
fully agree. Anil says this has been full of new stuff. He enjoyed it. And Joel, if you want to know a little bit more on the crypto's role on in the metaverse, make sure to check back Confo's conversation. I think it was 43. Diego, correct me if I'm wrong. Make sure
yeah,
to check
it's two
out
weeks
the
ago. Enter
metaverse,
the metaverse.
enter the metaverse episode of Social Confoes, and you will learn a lot more. Once again, Mitchell, thank you so much for joining in and
No
sharing
problem.
your knowledge. As always, Diego, thank you. And to everybody in the comments, thank you so much for tuning in. This was Social Confoes. See you back next week, same place, same time. Bye bye.